Dun, 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 dun. Hey, everybody.
Dun, 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 dun. Here's our bumper music, bumper music.
That's right. Bumper music. Woo! Hey, this is the Jimmy Doan Show.
Jimmy Doan Show with Jimmy Doan and Counselor Curtis.
That's right, I'm here too. We can't use bumper music yet because we have yet to overcome our copyright hurdles, but we shall. So, anyway, y'all, we do this show twice a week, 4 p.m. on Wednesdays and Sundays.
And for those of you who screwed up, you tried to watch us an hour ago or something.
What? I didn't see that.
Yeah, and today was the first day of...
daylight saving.
Right, exactly.
None of our listeners do.
No, but I'm just saying, they're sitting there thinking it's 5 o'clock and they missed the show.
Right. Hey, look, Gene's already here. Hey, now I'm sure all our guys got it, but...
Okay.
But welcome to the show, and what's going on?
Okay, well, this is our last show...
What?
Before the midterms.
For the midterms.
Elections, Tuesday.
Okay.
Big deal on Tuesday.
Oh, hey, Cousin Bill.
Yeah, good to see. The big deal will be, and what we'll have on Wednesday is our recap.
Okay.
Of what
where we prove why we were correct.
That's
the
right.
Entire time.
It is interesting to see the here in Florida. There seems that DeSantis has made a slight run, maybe for
who knows. I mean, what
Rick Scott maybe slight run on.
We've talked about for decades that nothing happens until the last week of the thing. Most people don't.
Well, today is the last day at I forget what time, but right about now is the last day for early voting here in Florida. So starting Tuesday, you're actually going to have to go down to the polls and go down to the polling places and actually submit your thing. Mm-hmm. So it'll be a big deal.
So what's your take on the whole thing?
Well, I think that I think that the polls are totally wrong. I don't think there's going to be a blue wave at all. I actually am fairly confident that the Republicans are going to hold the House. What's interesting, and I got a little thing here about Maxine. She's vowing revenge because she's going to be head of one of the financial services committee. She's going to be the owner of that, and that financial services committee, of course, is the ones that oversees Wall Street. And she's definitely, as a poor pauper person that she is, in her $1 million house.
Well, what do you think they're going to do? There's a lot of theory and speculation about, look, if the Democrats win the House, then Trump has somebody to blame if financial things go off the rails.
Especially with Maxine ahead of it.
Well,
oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's right. Well,
I mean, this could save his second term if he loses the midterms, is what I'm getting at.
Okay, interesting.
Because if the Republicans retain power in both houses, and then there's some type of huge financial collapse, they're going to eat it.
Right.
Big time.
Right.
But if we can say, look, the House controls finances. I'm a genius at setting up things that will later fall down.
Okay.
I mean, this was like an hour ago. So... brilliant.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, let me go on here. I've got a couple of pages.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'll start off with the border checkpoints.
Okay.
A number of border control checkpoints in the European Union are about to get increasingly and unsettlingly, it says here in the thing, futuristic. In Hungary, Latvia, and Greece, travelers will be given an automated lie detection test by an animated AI border agent. A robot will now.
Right.
No, this is great. The system called iBorder Control, I love this, you have to put the little I, is part of a
It's like friendly until you say the wrong thing.
That's exactly. No.
It gives you the furrowed brows.
Yes, that's right. That is interesting. So the system is part of a 6-month pilot program by the Hungarian National Police at 4 different border crossing points. iBorder Control System will collect data and move beyond biometrics and onto biomarkers of deceit. So what it'll do is the virtual border agent.
What does it do? Go ahead, you tell me.
Will ask travelers questions after they've passed through the checkpoint. Mm-hmm. Questions include, "What's in your suitcase?" Mm-hmm. And if you open the suitcase and show me what is inside, will it confirm that your answers are true? According to New Scientist, the system reportedly records travelers' faces using AI to analyze 38 micro gestures, scoring each response.
Right, right.
The virtual agent is reportedly customized according to the traveler's gender, ethnicity, and language.
Okay.
For travelers who pass the test, they will receive a QR code. Bang.
A stamp.
A QR code that lets them through the border. I mean,
So what's interesting about this is, of course, lie detector tests are inadmissible in court.
Right.
Because they're unscientific.
Right.
Which means you can't rely on them.
Right.
So, I
can cheat them.
Well, or you can get false positives.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes, of course.
And so...
who isn't nervous anyway?
Well, exactly. And we do a large inoculation, as you know, during jury selection, and talk about the different ways that innocent people can appear guilty because of the nervousness of just being in front of the audience there, just being in front of the jury, or just going through a checkpoint. So I'm curious as to what level of authority they'll grant. I mean, look, this is an experimental program, obviously.
Right.
I'm not expecting it to say, and then it opens fire if your score is less than.
Well, what they do it here. Apparently, it says here, if they don't pass the test, the virtual agent will reportedly get more serious.
Right.
And the traveler will be handed off to a human agent.
Right.
Who will assess the report. But according to the New Scientist, this pilot program won't, in its current state, prevent anyone's ability for crossing the border.
Well, what good is it?
Yes, well, that's the last sentence in the story.
Right. Well, of course, look, what they're doing, though, is, as like we said, gathering biometric data. At some point, the machines will be able to detect people's lies quite well. And at that point, there's going to be a serious paradigm shift, but we're not there yet.
No, that's it. I mean, you can just see it'll be sort of interesting in a way to see what shape the AI robots will take. I mean, will they be like humans, like the girl from MIT does her thing,
Right.
Or will it just be a box?
Well, you saw the movie AI, right?
Right.
It was all different things.
Yeah.
The TV set for a head on an Android and a dog with a TV screen. I mean, everything.
Yeah.
It's going to be everything you can imagine. Why wouldn't it be?
Unless Bezos gets the contract for it, and they're all going to be alike then. You order from Amazon.
You get one kind.
You get one kind. That's
There'll
right.
be a bunch.
Okay, so that is kind of one of those things that we see coming down the pike. Next item, can Trump end birthright citizenship by executive order? Now, we talked a little bit about this. This has to do with the 14th Amendment.
Well, in some ways, I mean, what it comes down to, what we talked about is end it for whom and for what and for what purposes. I mean, what are we talking about here? A paradigm shift in the immigration policy, an asylum shift. He can't unilaterally change immigration laws that are in place, but he can order his administration to take actions based on laws that are already in place, based on his interpretation of those laws.
Right. Well, his interpretation, that's what's happened, is that there are competing forces on both sides.
Well, I got news for the objectors. The president has his strongest area of power in foreign affairs. And if he wants to shut the border down, he can just declare national emergency, border shut. Okay. It's over. Open fire. I mean, he can do that.
Yeah.
Deploy the Sopwith Camel Fleet. I mean, look, I don't know why they wouldn't just deploy one biplane instead of 10,000 troops.
Yeah, right.
That would be way scarier. Way scarier.
Seriously thinking. I mean, and
just that sound. Like,
You remember what they used to on some of the planes during the Second World War? They used to paint a big teeth on them. Like
sure, for sure.
So you certainly have to do that, and you'd hear it comes.
Oh yeah, no, you'd hear it from. It would be that, it'd be like the buzz bombs from London.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, it was always told me you needed a constitutional amendment. Guess what? You don't, says Trump. You can definitely do it with an act of Congress, but now they're saying I can do it just with an executive order. So what's happened is they said they're setting up the troops on the border, and I was watching one of his rallies yesterday, or with Mrs. Jimmy, who's just adoring, a Kool-Aid drinker for Trump. And
in the tank.
In the tank, yeah. So, but he said, we're setting up the tent cities, and nobody's gonna get.
He can do it.
Yeah.
He does have the power to shut down the border unilaterally. He has enormous power when it comes to the international border. So he can do whatever he wants to do for as long as he needs to do it, unless Congress were to seriously get off their butts and take some very pointed action.
Well, it's interesting, of course, because speaking of Congress getting off its butt, as you well know, the midterms are tomorrow, but nobody changes anything until January 2nd.
Okay.
So the Republicans are in charge for the rest of November and all of December. So they can, who knows what will get through then, I have no idea. Okay, so the controversial new citizenship question. Now, speaking of citizenship, they have decided to put a new question on the as you know, every decade, and we're coming up on 2020, when the census must be taken. Now, the census has gotten more and more intrusive over the years. I mean, it used to be they just go out there and count people, and that was it. We have this many people. That has now morphed into a 2 or 3 page questionnaire about your life.
Well, that's because of the effort at gerrymandering and such.
Well, not only that, a lot of it has to do with government programs as to whether you are a person of color or you're gay or whatever, who knows what, because they're all protected classes now, and you get special privileges if you're a protected class. You get if you happen to be part Indian, you get to get into Harvard Law School.
Yeah, but I don't think the census really authorizes or sort of provides the authority for those types of benefits and such.
I think it does.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure. That's one of the reasons.
directly relates to the voting thing, though.
Right,
and they can really move things around based on the population and.
Well, anyway, those population numbers that they've come up with, of course, are determine how many congressional seats an electoral college each state gets.
There you go.
And of course, that's the big deal. And of course, it's interesting. Of course, a lot of people are saying we need to get rid of the electoral college, which of course may not be a perfect system by a long shot. But what it means is that you will only campaign like in 3 cities.
Yeah,
New York,
but
LA.
It is weird that the superdelegate system.
I think they're banned. That was for the Democrats only. They never had it in the
No,
Republicans.
the Republicans had it as well. Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And it was differently organized, but they have systems whereby, for example, I think every representative was a superdelegate automatically.
Really?
On the Democratic side.
I didn't know that.
Weird structures, and that power structure can be manipulated a lot more easily than the general voting public.
Right. Well, if you only have, it's in the case of the Democrats, if you've got in the House, if you've got 177 people that are your super delegates,
right?
That's a far cry from the 20 million
exactly.
that you have to.
Exactly. A lot fewer people to influence.
Right. Exactly. And of course, they're all trying to retain their seats.
Yeah. Now, what about the voting? Do you want to address voting generally? I mean, now that our votes have been squeezed out of us.
Yeah.
To me, there's some question of the efficacy of voting generally. I mean, what do you get? You get to vote for one guy who gets to vote for one vote on whatever issues come up before him.
Well, the problem, of course, is, and this happens, is that there are a lot of people that are one issue people,
right?
Like Planned Parenthood or something,
or
abortion, for instance. Right. They are just one. It doesn't matter if you are just if you're Dillinger. But if you are, on one side or the other of the abortion issue, then you can count on that vote. And it's interesting because, of course, Congress they pass hundreds of laws every year affecting everything, affecting our lives in almost every minute detail. Mm-hmm. And so when you
get the good with the bad and the ugly.
You maybe get your one good. But the rest of it, is really
well, like you said. I think people count on that one issue, or I think there's an argument to be made that most people don't pay attention to enough of the issues and just vote on personality. And there may be more people in that group in the last few days voting like, who do we got here? You know,
Yeah.
what's their name? What do they dress like? And that kind of stuff. And oh, kind of like that guy rides a skateboard or something. And I mean, and then you're getting swings just based on personality, no politics involved. It's just,
Right. Yeah. Well, there are people. I mean, it's interesting in watching the Trump rallies, for instance. He's stumping for the Republicans, the governors, and the Senate people, and so forth in those states where he was, and they're fairly literate people, that kind of stuff. It's interesting. Anyway, the point was that what this new question is are you a citizen? And apparently that question has not been asked before in counting the people in the United States, the census. How many people are here? Okay. Now, one of the questions is are you going to answer this like, no, I'm not a citizen? I mean, if you have a green card, you're not really a citizen, right?
No.
Yeah. So you say, are you a citizen? No. What? But I guess what they're worried about is the people that are here illegally, and they're going to ask them, in the barrios or whatever it is, and all those people, are you a citizen? Well, they're not going to answer that.
Well, not only that, as soon as they hear that question, they're going to terminate the interview
right.
if they can. I mean,
that's right.
That's
well, it is interesting because, as you know, a lot of the census information, I'm guessing well over 90% of it is collected, without any interaction between the census takers. They just amass some numbers, but then there's the people that come to your front door random. It's a random check. Like at the airport, you were singled out for the extensive pat down, and you are also there as an extensive questionnaire that they come to your house and they keep knocking on your door until you answer.
Well, it's a big statute. It used to be, hey, cousin Chad. It used to be a big issue as to whether or not where the people are.
Right.
The movement. I mean, like I said, the voting can be very well determined by the way that census is counted.
Yeah.
And so I think there's very specific procedures about how the census has to be taken.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. And again,
Statutory.
what we'll find out after the 2020 census, of course, is how many states will lose a representative or an electoral vote, or other states will gain. Florida typically has gained at the expense of other states.
Well, we keep growing in population.
Right, that's the whole point. So anyway, it's what they're worried about, of course, on this particular question is the government has promised to keep it confidential. And of course, a lot of people are saying, yeah, well, like they're really going to do that.
Well, it's very difficult to believe in confidentiality at this point in the digital universe.
When you think about it, hardly a day goes by that you don't read about a 1 million person hack
Right.
on a bank, on Target, on Facebook, on whatever it is. And
I try to operate like everybody knows what I'm doing all the time.
There is no privacy,
right,
for sure. So anyway, okay. Let me go on next item on the list.
Do it.
It's not a big deal, but it was rumored earlier today that now appears to be a done deal. Former Fox News host and current State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert has reportedly been offered the job as U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, and she's a Fox, for what it's worth.
Okay.
And she's apparently a lot of people are saying she's a bobble. What do you call it?
Talking head?
A talking. What do you call it? An info babe. And what's she going to do at the United Nations? Well, it turns out she's the current United States Department spokesperson. She's been a government affairs consultant. She's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, which, of course, I'm not sure that's a really good thing, but that's where all the heavy hitters are, at any rate.
Right.
And she's covered world affairs on national networks, including ABC. But all the dumb lefties here claim is, oh my gosh, Fox News. So they're panic stricken that Fox News is going to take over our seat at the UN.
Well,
And Nikki Haley apparently did a pretty good job for Trump.
she was like a former governor and such.
Yeah, right. No, that's right. Yeah, she was actually listed for running for president at some point.
Oh, she's running in 2 years. Take my word for it.
Okay, I'm taking your word for it. Okay. The next item I've got here, the digital revolution has spawned a handful of U.S.-based technology companies since the 1990s that now have a combined financial and cultural power greater than most sovereign states. This is from Tim Berners-Lee, who was the inventor of the computer scientist who invented the web in 1989.
Al Gore might have something to say about that.
Right, I know that. But Tim Berners-Lee was the Swiss guy who invented basically invented the web, and said he was disappointed with the current state of the internet, following scandals over abuse of personal data and use of social media to spread hate. He said. Now, and what he's working on a new web thing that keeps privacy, in other words.
Right.
What he's worried about is what naturally happens. It's kind of interesting. What naturally happens, you end up with one company dominating the field. So through history, there's no alternative to really coming in and breaking things up. That's what he's saying is you have to break them up. These big companies. Well, of course, who's going to break them up? A bigger company called the government.
Well, right.
And at the point of a gun. So
it's funny he doesn't see that the internet broke up the prior network.
Right, exactly. No, that is interesting. And he invented this like in his 30s, and he's now 63, still a young guy. There is a danger of concentration, he says, but he urged caution, saying that the speed of innovation in both technology and tastes could ultimately cut some of the biggest technology companies down to size. And we've said this. Facebook or whatever it was,
MySpace,
yeah, whatever. They disappeared. I mean, it's interesting to see that the search engine, the AOL, all the search engines that came before. Somebody was going through
yeah. Well, like you said on Big Bang Theory,
right?
They do the contest.
They had a contest to see.
Yeah, look, I think that I've been hearing about Web 2.0 for a long time. It's not going to happen unless Web 1.0 really does start to suck, and it's just not sucking. It's good.
It's pretty good.
Really
well,
good.
It's interesting. He did say this, which I thought was interesting. Before breaking them up, quote, before breaking them up, we should see whether or not they're not just disrupted by a small player beating them out of the market, but by the market shifting, by the interest of going in somewhere else. That's exactly it. I'm glad he added that.
Right.
Because at least he realizes that there's disruption in the market, even for the biggest player. Witness Sears.
Unfortunately, he still projects a time frame beyond which it will still be necessary to break them up.
Yeah.
He says before breaking them up, we should wait until what time period? Okay, we waited. Now break them up. So
now we can break them up. Well, of course and then of course the question is, how do you break them up? Which is kind of interesting.
Well, that's when you get into the stupidity of breaking them up to begin with.
Right.
It's like, CEO, you go over here, and the manager, you go over there. I mean,
no, that's right. And it's interesting.
Everybody count off 1, 2, 1, 2.
Right.
And birthdays through January through July.
Right. And no, that's exactly right. The second letter of your name begins with.
That's right. That's right.
So the interesting thing is that all too often we've seen, and we've talked about this previously, is that one of the horrible things that ever passed was in the 1890s was the Sherman Antitrust Act. And of course, by the time it got around to being used on Standard Oil's command of the market had decreased from 90% down to 10% or something. That's when they decided to break them up. I mean, the market was, in fact, figuring it all out. And
prove it.
Yeah, prove it, right? I mean, it's just about the time they get in there to start breaking things up, you realize that the market has already figured it out. I mean, electricity was coming, for instance, in place of kerosene and that sort of thing. And new oil wells were being discovered in West Texas that were going to compete, and blah, 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 on and on. And the railroads and so forth. When you think about it, you think about this stuff, the market is amazing, and if you just leave it alone, it'll be just fine. Okay, next item, Phoenix, Arizona. 2 congresswomen running for U.S. Senate in Arizona are crisscrossing the state, raising millions of dollars and trying to exploit every possible advantage to eke out a win in what both sides expect to be a photo finish race. The wild card, Angela Green, a Green Party candidate, interestingly enough, who could win votes that might have gone to Democrat Kristen Snem or whatever.
Put a lot of effort into that one.
No, I don't care.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Kristen, whatever. Clearing a path for Republican Martha McSally. Interesting. So this is the spoiler thing. We've seen this happen before where, I mean, it's one of the reasons that Woodrow Wilson got elected was because Teddy ran as an independent Bull Moose Party guy and sucked off some of the votes from the Republican.
Right.
But I mean, this happens all the time when you look
this
we've seen major. When what's his name, the car guy, the Nader, sucked off some votes, and we had to have the ballot counting with the
we had
Chads.
Ross Perot and
Ross
Bill Clinton, and look, I think that brings up another excellent point that dovetails in with the voting situation, which is, why don't we have ranked voting yet?
Ah, yes.
Ranked voting.
They do. One state, I think, does.
Okay.
I believe one state has done that.
I gotta think. I'm gonna urge everybody to go check that stuff out. From my perspective, every study that I've seen about it, which is not many, but I've done a little role playing with it and sort of game theory analysis, and it seems like a far superior way to vote.
Now, you might want to explain for most people what this is.
It basically means instead of just voting for one candidate, you get to rank how you would like to see the candidates. So if you want to see, if Hillary's your first vote, and then Bernie's your second vote, and then 17 other people, and then Trump at the bottom or something, or then you can do that, and the mathematics of it is such that you're not throwing away your second and third vote by taking your first vote person.
Right.
And so, we could actually have a nice surge in third parties if people place their third party candidate as their
second choice. Right.
It could be a fantastic surge and just a sea change in the political atmosphere, which is probably why they don't do it.
Well, that could be because what's amazing. I've seen this happen all the time. I've had people tell me, you vote for the lesser of two evils,
right.
blah blah blah, and I'm sitting there, but I don't want to. And
right.
My second choice would be, like, say in my case, the libertarian guy.
Right.
And they're telling me you're throwing your vote away. Well, actually, in the ranking, I'm not.
Right.
Suddenly, I'm not throwing it away. I'm making my will known, and if enough people, second choice is the libertarian, suddenly they're way up in the winning chain, in the winning.
Exactly.
What happened to our thing?
Nothing.
Okay, nothing. Okay. So anyway, that's interesting that they're all panicking in Arizona that that the spoilers might do something, and our solution to that is what you said. So next item: Democratic lawmakers are licking their chops for the opportunity to settle a few scores and ensure that Russiagate follows President Trump onto the 2020 election. California Democratic Representative Maxine Waters told a group of constituents last week what she would do after the November 6th election, which she said may be the most important one we've ever had. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Of course, they're always the most important. I've been to 25 of them in my life. The most important elections. Every one of them, since I was 21 years old. This is the most important one yet. Right. The 80-year-old representative will chair the Financial Services Committee if Democrats retain control of the House.
You just talked about this a few minutes ago.
I did?
Yeah.
She'll be the first African American?
Well, you said that she would chair the Financial Committee, and then we said that could backfire on the Democrats if
right. Okay. Well, if they take the House.
Right.
Yeah, completely. But her specific thing is she has said specifically she's vowed revenge on people. That
look, you got to figure, if the Democrats take the House, if they are anywhere close to picking up a seat or two in the Senate, there's going to be an impeachment hearing.
Really? You think?
Yeah, I think they can't. There's no way they'll be able to not do an impeachment hearing unless it's dead on arrival. If they lose the Senate ridiculously, and the Senate is just no way they're getting it through there, then they'll focus on other stuff.
Okay. But Pelosi said already that was down on her list.
Well, she's trying to stop the incredible tidal wave, which would be pushing her to do it.
Yeah.
And the peer pressure for her to do that would be ridiculous, and everybody would be trying to tell her what to do to get it done. So she's got to inoculate against that, or she's just going to be playing defense the entire time she's in there.
Could be.
So,
all right, well, we'll see. Donald Trump Jr. had a grievance to air on Saturday morning. CNN refused to run an election ad released by his father. They said it was racist.
Oh, the one about the guy who killed the cops?
Yeah. And so this they're talking about the Willie Horton ad from that apparently helped tank Dukakis.
I don't think it's a serious objection. If you think about it, it's literally impossible to talk about immigration without talking about somebody of a different group. I mean,
right. No question. I mean,
nation,
as you say, we're not being flooded by Norwegians.
Well, even if we were, they're Norwegians. They're not Americans. You can't. It doesn't. They're and there's going to be an ethnocentric argument about it.
Yeah.
You can't escape the potential xenophobic crossover.
Yeah.
If you're going to try to defend the border situation. So.
Well, at any rate, the ad was racist, and CNN, apparently doubled down.
They jumped on it real quick.
Yeah,
whatever. Like I said, I don't.
Okay. Now, the other thing that's kind of interesting, and I like this, is that guess who else has come full force into the fray is Barack Obama.
Well, yeah. Well, I was expecting him to ride off into the sunset.
Well, and apparently he's going to the exact opposite.
Yeah.
He's coming in from the east, with the rising sun.
Flying.
Former President Barack Obama's voice has a way of lifting into a high-pitched tone of astonishment when he talks about his successor, almost as if he still cannot believe that the executive mansion he occupied for 8 years is now the home of President Trump. What's interesting is he's out there. He was in Miami, and he hit the campaign trail for our Gillum, and whoever else was running, Democrats running, and so forth. And of course, my question is, he's down here doing all this stuff in a fiery speech in Miami on Friday afternoon before heading to Georgia for another rally. Mr. Obama said even conservatives should be disturbed by Trump's disregard of the Constitution and basic decency and so forth and blah, blah, blah. But my question is, what's he getting out of this? I mean, why is he flying around?
Well,
he's not
I'm
gonna be
curious
president
about
again.
that too. Well, so I'm glad you asked. There's one more thing on his bucket list.
Michelle.
No, she's already in the bucket.
Okay.
No. He wants to be on the Supreme Court.
Ah.
So the Democrats are
Interesting.
very.
We've had one president before that went on the Supreme Court.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And he also preferred to be on the Supreme Court to being president.
Right.
Look, it's a cushy job. Man.
Yeah.
So I think that's what he's angling for. He's trying to do his little service. He gets a few people in there, man. And then the pat on the back is, here's your nomination.
Okay.
So, and of course, he needs those senators and he needs those people in there for the confirmation.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, he needs. It'll be another Kavanaugh type thing if the Democrats have one more vote than the Republicans in the Senate.
Yeah,
you can see that. You can see that coming up.
Sure,
that'll be fun. So anyway, the final polls point to a narrow House majority for Democrats in Florida. Sunday is the final day. We said this final day for early voting. But what's interesting is a number of black churches, this is fascinating to me, are expected to participate in this is today, souls to the polls. Trips to early voting locations that would help Democrats chip away at the Republicans' dwindling relative advantage. At the end of the day, Saturday registered Republicans had cast only 28,000 more votes than Democrats out of 4.8 million absentee votes so far. What's interesting about this is the fact that this is racist. I mean, you're going to go to a black church, you're going to bus them over to the early voting.
How is that racist?
It's a black church.
So what?
It's not racist?
No, that's their church. They're taking their people to the polls.
Okay. Interesting. I was wondering what would happen if the white churches did that.
Same thing. They would call it a church thing. They wouldn't say.
Okay.
There's nothing.
All right. If you say so. I just thought it was interesting that
you're in a little deep after Halloween.
I guess. I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, that's pretty much what I had to say.
That's all you got? What about? Okay. Well, I had a couple of things. I think
good.
We had we remember the New York City situation.
You mean they're going broke?
Yeah.
Yeah. I noticed that they're the next one to go broke.
Well,
because of the pension fund.
Correct. Now I said that. Now what I've got here, I've got the teleporter working, so I can teleport us directly to wonderful Central Park, and let's just do that.
Okay, here we are.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Your transporter didn't quite work. You seem to have ended up in a New York City street or something.
Where I belong.
Well, yeah. I'm sorry about that. I don't have enough power for another transport right now, but I'll try to get it on the next one.
Okay.
But for New York, as you were saying, they are $100 billion in debt in their unfunded liabilities.
And people don't understand what unfunded liability means.
Well, it means they've committed to pay for the health care of their city workers.
Right.
Every
Your
city worker.
retirees
Right.
also.
Well, not only retirees,
But-
all you have to do is work in New York City as a city employee for 10 years, and
Vested?
Correct. You are vested in health care. So that you get free city health care if you work for the city for 10 years. So they're quickly going into the red in terms of that, and thus they have a $100 billion unfunded liability sort of right around the corner. $50 billion in a pension liability, and another $100 billion in bond debt. Okay? So $250 billion for New York City. However, their economy is like a $1.5 trillion economy. So really, as a percentage of their GDP, not all that huge. I was kind of surprised that they weren't in greater debt than that.
Well, of course, the pension fund is and that sort of thing. Those are separate from New York City. That is to say,
I don't know, that was the city, maybe the city pension fund, or the.
Well, what I'm saying is they have a pension and medical manager type people that control those funds separate from New York City. That is to say, because New York City has a $1.5 trillion economy, really has, I mean, it could have a $10 trillion economy, but the fact is that the pension fund and the Medicare fund or whatever it is are broke. In other words, they're not going to be able to pay those when they walk into the doctor, they're going to say no can do.
Well, what I'm suggesting is that there's enough money awash through New York City so that
They're going to have to raise the taxes.
Well, right.
Okay. I got you.
Significantly, but it in theory, looking at the percentages, you would think it wouldn't cripple them to do that.
Well, of course, all economics is on the margin.
I know, it's hard, and they have to compete with the other megacities, really.
Yeah.
And I got to imagine that places like Singapore and Tokyo and some other places are probably trying, Hong Kong, making their places friendlier for taxes.
Yeah.
In order to sort of bleed off New York, but.
Now, of course, you probably don't want to talk too much about Japan because they're aging, and they're
Tokyo still has the #1 city GDP.
Okay.
I mean,
again, the GDP is one thing, but when the government is in up to its eyeballs in debt, they're going to have to find that money from someplace.
Yeah.
And the only place they can do it is from the productive class.
Right. And you just mentioned that Japan doesn't have a whole lot of youth over there.
No, that's one of the big problems. They're an aging place, and those people are going, and they're living longer. I mean, they're into their 90s for guys like Grandma. Grandma, my mother-in-law.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, she got a check through her 99th birthday.
Right.
I mean, for 30 years, she was getting a big fat check.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Interesting. All right. So then one other quick transport here. I can take us over to, let me just warm up the transporter.
Warm up the transporter.
That's right. And I can take us to the palace in China, where we are right there.
Okay.
And kablamo. Oh no. Shoot.
What? What happened?
I'm at the palace, but you're at the China palace.
Oh,
close.
I see. Yes. Thank you so much. Can I get the Chinese food there?
Yeah, you can probably. But it's not going to be as good as the stuff I can get here.
Yeah.
So sorry about that. I don't know what's going on with
What is this, the one down the street?
The transporter. Something. I don't know what's going on with this.
The China Palace. I love it.
This is just
it's
out of control.
Yeah, I don't know. It's in San Francisco.
I wanted to go to China because I wanted to talk about the privatization of China. Are you ready for a quick few statistics?
Yes.
Get this. Private companies in China constitute now, today, 50% of China's tax base,
Really?
60% of China's GDP, 70% of China's tech innovation, whatever that means, 80% of China's unemployment, and 90% of China's new jobs. So China is really shifting.
Going capitalist.
They are. They
Going
are.
capitalist. Well,
We were talking about the private rocket company.
the private rocket company.
Right.
How did they get that? You know, you try. I mean, you had to get all kinds of permission here to have a private rocket company, and of course, you see what they've done. But in China, of all places,
Yeah.
can you imagine?
So it looks as though the leadership has said, wait a minute. Maybe if we allow the middle class to grow and become rich, and we tax the bejesus out of them, we'll all become rich beyond the dreams of avarice.
That's right.
Which they will.
Right.
But it's interesting to see that sort of, that's kind of a sea change. And I didn't realize that Xi Jinping or what was the last guy, Deng Xiaoping or something?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that I hacked that. I apologize, whatever that. But I didn't realize that they had allowed that much privatization.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty interesting.
Pretty amazing. Yeah, it is, and it's interesting. I don't know. It'd be kind of interesting to see where it all is, in a way, if it's how it's distributed. But lots and lots of people are getting on the private bandwagon in
Yeah.
China. That's for sure.
Well,
And what's interesting is what you're going to see is the big rhetoric, I guess, in this country is it's the slave labor in China. This, building the watches or the tennis shoes. They're getting paid $1 a week or whatever it is. But the simple fact is that's going to go up.
Well, not only that, but that's better than the 50 cents a week they were earning out in the rice fields.
Right, that's
Look,
right.
10, 20 years ago, China had 700 million people still farming rice. Yeah.
Interesting.
And so I don't know what the numbers are like now. I know there's been a massive surge to the cities, and that's obviously where our manufacturing jobs go, which I don't mind because, of course, it provides us good stuff inexpensively.
Yep.
But it's interesting to see those.
Well, it's interesting because it happened in this country when you realize that in 1900, still well over half the population was on the farms, and today it's less than 2%. I mean, basically, are the farming.
So they're
and it's still we still export food. We still make food into gas.
right. We burn it.
We burn it. That's right.
All right. And speaking of cars, I'm just going to urge all of our listeners to get a self-driving car as fast as you can, because more and more human operators who are not under the influence of anything are being prosecuted for homicide in vehicle accidents. There were a couple more stories this week. A 24-year-old girl somewhere ran into 3 kids at a stop sign at
Right. Bus stop or something.
Right. And everybody's like, "Oh my God, she didn't stop when the school bus was there." Well, look, there's just no question in my mind this 24-year-old kid wasn't out trying to mow down children
No.
on that day, and yet that's how they're going to treat her. They've transferred the criminal intent into her brain from her intent to just drive. And again, no indication she was under the influence of anything.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll figure out she was distracted because she was texting or anything like that, but it doesn't matter from my perspective.
Yeah.
All of those things, your mind has to do something when you're driving, and that is it has to keep you from being distracted. And everybody knows that. And there's a million things that can distract you.
Oh, God, change the radio station.
Exactly. Passenger, girlfriend, yesterday, tomorrow, everything.
I'm speaking of that. I always have to laugh when you see the movie and the guy's driving and his girlfriend's over here and he goes over there and he's talking to her.
Oh, the old ones are great.
I know. They're over there and they're talking for like 5 minutes.
Right.
And we're like, why did you run off the road? You also, you know what you can do in some of the old movies, which is kind of interesting. If you look carefully, they took away the rear view mirror so that
Right.
So that the
you can see the whole.
So you can see the whole thing. I thought it was interesting. But
So anyway, hey, thanks for joining us, everybody. I think that's all we got for today. And a few minutes early here. And yeah, what?
that's good. That works for me. No, we'll be back on Wednesday at 4:00.
That's right.
With our wrap up of the election
That's right.
and whatever else other news might come to bear.
That's right.
So tell your friends. Thank you so much.
Feel free to share or pilfer us or whatever. So,
Yeah.
Pillory.
Pillory, right? Pillory us. Yeah. That's right. This is our outgo.
That's right. Our outro music.
Outro, right?
We do have some requested in the pipeline, so hopefully we'll have some soon. So.
We lost the game yesterday.
Yeah, man. What's up with that?
That's going to suck for next weekend because how many cars did we get to park?
Not that many.
Not many. No, next week's going to be terrible.
Well, you never know. It could pick up a little bit.
Our last.
We got. I think we got Idaho coming up. Who lives in Idaho?
Well, my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law.
What?
Yes. Yes, my sister-in-law, among others. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
See you Wednesday at 4:00.